Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. Again, John, Dave, and myself. We're going to look back over Leinster's quite emphatic victory against Munster last weekend. All the other Pro 14, or URC, I should call it now, action. And of course, look forward to our big Heineken Cup final in Marseilles on the weekend. So, lads, 35-25 against the old enemy. But I'm just wondering, are they the old enemy anymore? Like, a rivalry takes two teams, doesn't it?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
We do have two teams. We have the team that we normally beat them with, and the team we beat them with there last week. No, I don't think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, for them, it was very important that they got a good result this week. They didn't. Now, as it turns out, the bad result they got was the best bad result they could have got. But I don't think they're going to be too happy about it.
Yeah. Look, it was fairly inexcusable. Like we rested the first 15 and 5 of the 20, the rest of 5 of the subs that will be probably playing this week. So if not now, when are Munster going to beat us? Like, do you blame the cattle? Do you blame the shepherd? You know, I'm sure it's a little of column A and a little of column B, but we have to be living in our heads rent free, as they say down there, at this stage, because you know, if they weren't going to beat us last weekend, it was like we were nearly. I was waiting for a load of Welsh people to come on and go, "This is the problem. The IRFU own all 4 teams, and they just organised it so Leinster put out their B team and Munster just get a home quarter final just because the IRFU got all the money." Well, didn't work out like that in the end, you know. And you know, I can't say that, like, while I would support Munster when they're not playing Leinster. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for them this week. I just, you know, they should be better than that. They really should be better than that.
There were things they were doing that were, you know, not dissimilar to the stuff we were doing, but you could see that it was a bit more primitive. I mean, I think Birch highlighted it last night on against the Head by comparing a kick that led to Scott Penny's try from us to a kick that led to the ball going out in the full for them. They just weren't taking that extra step. What they're doing is a bit less nuanced than what we're doing. I was looking at Cormac Foley's try, and you know where Osborne runs laterally, but then Frawley cuts the line to make the line break. And then you compare that to, say, to Chris Farrell, doing a lot of lateral running as well, but nobody was making a line for him. So he was kind of stuck running laterally. And like what Munster were doing, Munster were trying to keep the width in the game, which is fair enough, but they weren't able to access it the way that we were. We kept our width in the game and we were able to access it. And if you've got, I mean, Munster have 2 very, very good wingers, two of them, like one of them is one of the best wingers to ever play for Ireland, and the other's, you know, a very, very good current international winger. And they had no real impact on the game whatsoever. And we had, you know, a kid out on the wing, and they weren't able to get to him.
Yeah,
but you're dead right, Dave. But like from my vantage point at the game, it was very evident that, well, 2 things that I definitely could see. One was that Munster were crabbing across the pitch continually and running into each other's space, and therefore, but when the ball did actually get wide, there was no space for the wingers to work in, because whoever was Goggin or Farrell, who I thought actually did have a good game, had encroached and taken all of the space for the wingers to use. And secondly, when they did have the ball, they didn't know what to do with it, and it was quite clear that they just looked like they'd run out of ideas, and then they resort to, let's just hoof it down the pitch. And I think even when, like, you know, it worked to their advantage in the game on Saturday. They got a couple of tries out of it, out of confusion, and you know, we handed them most of the points that they got. Fair play.
All 3 Munster tries came from errors.
Yeah. So you know, they capitalized on it, and that's fine when you're playing, you know. And those lads who tugged out for Leinster on Saturday have a huge and great future ahead of them. You know, whatever shade of jersey that they wear, but they're not the Leinster first team. And I think when Munster come up against, you know, like the Leinster first, the Toulouse first, the La Rochelle first, you know, those teams don't make those basic fundamental errors. And so kicking the ball in the air and hoping for a lucky ricochet, and then a fast winger following up can pounce on it. Those opportunities are just not going to happen on a frequent basis.
No, you're dead right. You're dead right. Hoping for opposition errors isn't the best way to go about. Isn't the best game plan. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but Donald Lenihan said it a couple of weeks ago during the South African tour. He said again on RT. He said people are surprised that this Leinster team is so good, but they get to practice against the fourth best team in world rugby every week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And another thing that he said, which I thought was quite surprising, he actually was the first one now to start calling bullshit on their slogans and the brave and the faithful, and I think he's having a kind of a subtle dig at, say, Van Gran, and sort of saying, oh, once we have the 16th man behind us, we're unstoppable, blah blah blah. However, maybe he should have started calling bullshit instead of when Van Gran is effectively has played his second or third last game. Why wasn't he calling this 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
I don't think things were as bad as they are now. They still had really good players. Peter O'Mahony was younger. What's his name? Stander was still around. They'd slightly better players. And I think, the thing about
Conor Murray was in
great form. Pardon?
Sorry, Conor Murray was in great form.
Conor Murray was a good form. But Munster, say, 2000 through 2010, had a world-class international standard 1 to 10. Right, so they could use the brave and the faithful and stand up and fight and all that kind of stuff. They could use that as a distraction for opposition, who were expecting a team full of boot biting bollock. But when what actually was arriving was a really, really high quality, nuanced forward pack with excellent additions in the back, like Halstead, like Tupoki, like Dougie Howlett. And that was grand. It was a nice distraction. It took focus away from the excellence of the team, and it worked in Munster's favour. It helped play that underdog thing. Now they don't have that team. All they have are the slogans. And the slogans and reality are two very different things.
Yeah. On the other side of the page, however, what about our lads? I know we're in danger of straying into Munster worshipping territory, or making a whole podcast about Munster, which is not a good idea when we're a Leinster podcast. But
it seems as though every other podcast you listen to, or
dog bites man, John. Dog bites man.
Yeah.
It ain't news. Man bites dog.
Yeah.
Well, between News Talk and RTE, it's just Munster fest. But anyway,
I have to say, for the nth week running, I was super impressed with Joe Mccarthy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Superb game.
He's a great player.
I think he's been sort of the find of the season. We've spoken last week about Van der Fleer taking on board every bit of advice that he was given from Farrell or Lancaster, and he's done wonderfully well. But my God, this kid has come from kind of nowhere, and you can kind of see why there's a couple of second rows leaving over the summer, and we haven't really gone into the market with the exception of Jason Jenkins, bringing him up from Munster, who he's got a Springbok cap for sure, but he's not a stellar name. They didn't go into the market to get somebody knowing that this guy Joe McCarthy is coming through.
Well,
and once again but once again you have to say kudos to the Leinster Academy for producing these guys and bringing them through to slot seamlessly into the professional setup. And do we miss Fardy, who was there for 3 or 4 years? Not particularly.
Probably
he was a super player, but we've got someone coming through who's going to have a very, very strong career.
Absolutely. I expected Toner to fill that kind of void and play more this year and be a bridge between what's in effect 3 second rows coming through now. There's 2 guys got promoted from the academy, as well as McCarthy. McCarthy's in first year, don't forget, in the academy. This is his first season in the academy. He was born in 2001. Yeah. Just let that sink in for a minute.
I'd really rather not.
This is a guy.
There's every chance that he's going to go down to New Zealand this summer.
Absolutely. The Irish
we'll
team,
know next week.
The Irish team love him. They had him in on during the Six Nations as part of the squad, and they love him apparently. So he's got, and just the expression on the guy's face, even he looks like he was born to play. You know, it looks like nothing phases him. He's got this head on him that, like, you know, you hit him in the head with a mallet and he just goes, okay, now it's my turn. You know, so
let's not hit him on the head with a mallet. But you combine that with Leo Nua, as I've decided to call Maloney, and you know what we already have there in James Ryan, and then Ryan Baird coming back to a bit of form, and then you know there's Charlie Ryan is coming through as well.
Two other guys, yeah, Brian Deeney and Charlie Ryan.
Brian Deeney. Yeah. I thought it was great to see Alex Soroka get a game, but how exciting was it to see Jordan Larmer back to his hot step and best?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he had a few runs and two of them led directly to tries.
Yeah,
you know, but like it's just a piece of joy to watch him in when he's going forward, and I kind of looking through your fingers a little bit when the ball's put up into the air from when particularly when he's at full back.
Yeah.
I mean,
the first ball that went up, he kind of had a problem with. Of course, admittedly, now he's against two of the best aerial operators in the game, in Conway and Earls. But I still wasn't. But when he gets the ball on the deck,
yeah.
If only he had ever done that to Munster before, they might have been forewarned.
I'm just wondering if someone from Kilmacud Crokes or someone like that could give him a few tips.
Few pointers. There was obviously McCarthy versus Ryan Baird in terms of auditions for next week, or this week as it is now. There was Frawley versus Larmer, and the other interesting thing about the selection was Cian Healy being put at tight head. Some people are seeing that as a furlong injury issue. However, here's my theory, and maybe it's not my theory. Well, I didn't hear it anywhere else, so it's my theory, okay? If anybody else says it after this, then it's still my theory. That if, let's say Tyke Furlong is good, but he's not going to go the full, he might only go 40 minutes, say, and Michael Alatoa has to come on a bit early, and something happens to him, you could bring Porter back on and put Healy across rather than go to uncontested scrums, because Leo actually gave a little clue there where he said, oh, you know, he got into 13 men if there's uncontested scrums, or 14 men. So if you have Cian Healy able to switch across to tight head, you can then, because it's an injury, you can bring Porter back on at loose head and you can close the game out. Whereas if things don't go badly and you get 40, 50 minutes out of Tyke Furlong, Alatoa goes like a train, that's it, we're all good.
Just in your emergency situation there, John, would it not make a bit more sense to play the international loose head at loose head and the international tight head at tight head?
I think that my theory, again, it's just my theory, is that they're reluctant to move Porter back across the tight head because they've made that decision, they've closed that door, they want him to get as much play.
Well, it works so well for Joey Carberry, I suppose.
I know. Joey Carberry never played tight head.
He hasn't played fullback in a while either, but anyway.
But one lad who I thought was exceptional, and you mentioned him there a second ago, was Frawley. Like, again, the line that he took for that, for that Foley's try, and his little dink across for Penny's try in the opening 90 seconds. Like, you know, and I just feel so sorry for the lad. He just seems to have, like, he's just coming into great form and he got a bang and, you know, had to go off when he was just motoring. Like, and it was such a shame to see him because of particularly the week that's in it. And I'm sure he wanted to stick up his hand to, you know, to ensure that he was selected in the 23 minimum. And when Larmer comes back and then has a game like he did, it's very difficult for the coaches to say, sorry, Kieran.
To be honest, unless Leo's lying through his teeth, I think Frawley's going to be on the bench on Saturday. Apparently, the reason for his non-return was that he timed out on a blood injury.
Yeah, well, when he went off, I mean, it was he went off on his own steam.
No,
and
his chin was gushing.
He was holding up the tissue to his chin. Yeah. So
you can see it. I mean, apparently it timed out on that. So, I'd suggest if he's fit, because he just offers so much flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's funny though that they have him and Ross Byrne. It's like they both can cover centre. They both can cover 10. Neither of them can cover the back three.
Frawley can play fullback.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, Frawley can play fullback. Fair enough. Yeah, it is a little kind of lacking in a winger. Like that's where Larmer, might get the nod. But that's if we don't go 6-2. We could go 6-2 as well.
Yeah, but the only thing is that, there's not many games that Sexton plays that he plays the full 80. So you're going to have to bring on somebody, right? So you bring on another at, I don't know, call it 65 minutes. But then you've got 15 minutes where you don't have cover. It's a big chunk of a game. So I don't know whether
he'll do something.
I don't, yeah.
Josh van der Fleer on the wing. See, if you do have the extra forward, I mean, Peter O'Mahony played in the wing for Ireland in a disastrous game in Italy in 2013.
The game we lost.
The game we lost to Italy, the only time we lost to them.
I mean, if you needed a winger, you'd bring Frawley on, put him in the centre, or put him at fullback and move Keenan across, or you'd move Ringrose across. I mean, the flexibility is there in the back. It's not like they've never played in those positions before. It's. I mean, you've got James Lowe as well is a multi-positional player in the back. So, I mean, he does offer flexibility. I don't see them. I mean, I think they'll pick the team that's best for Leinster, not the team that's best to play against La Rochelle.
Yeah. I hope they do that. Let's concentrate on, we get to the La Rochelle game, but I hope that they do concentrate on themselves and not be too psyched out with what isn't happening in La Rochelle. Because you can't control that. All you can do is control 15 or 20, 23 lads on our team. But before we move away from Saturday's game, first of all, pretty good crowd, 32,000. I mean, considering it was a dead rubber, we've been through. We said it all last week about the renewals, these tickets, all these knockout games. Or I know this wasn't a knockout game, but it was postponed. But there is knockout games coming in the future. People are on a bit of a, let's say a belt
event exhaustion
exercise. Yeah, or maybe so. Yeah, but anyway, 32K was a lot of people to go, so that was great.
Yeah, it's a good crowd.
The thing was, it was nice to see someone a very good servant to Leinster Rugby, like someone like Rory O'Loughlin, getting an opportunity to get in for his try. It was a pity Adam Byrne didn't get over when it was Larmer gave him a flea flicker. Yeah, he did. He played on very well. But it was good to see the last hurrah maybe of Toner, Cronin, and I mean that we mentioned it last week, but they have been great servants, and a lot of the good days that we've all shared of watching Leinster lift trophies, those two lads have been in the background of that group photo. So you gotta.
Well, you have to put Dev at the back.
You have to really. You do indeed.
He picked two balls out.
He
picked two balls out of the air that other lads were jumping for, and he just put up his hands and caught them.
Yeah,
you can't couch high.
He was like a basketball player, wasn't he? Really.
On that point about not being able to coach heights, do you remember they used to have a Route 66 or a Route 6 foot?
Yeah.
Going back to about 2007, they had this this initiative to try and get people of 6'6" or over playing rugby. Look what they've got now. 6'8" James Ryan. We've just lost 6'8" Jack Dunn. We've got 6'7" Brian Deeney, 6'6" Joe McCarthy, 6'8" Charlie Ryan. Like Jesus, they're falling out of trees now. I don't know what they're feeding them, but they weren't feeding them, whatever, 15 years ago. It's great to see that we have all that depth, and Rory O'Loughlin or Ross Maloney being our oldest second row at 27 years of age,
or as they call him in the Leinster squad, short arse.
Yeah, and you've got Soroka who can fill in, I'm sure, in the second row. I see him as a kind of a guy who's going to take the place of Josh Murphy. Who's gone to Connacht. So, there's another lad that might get that did get a
good send-off.
Yeah. Jack Dunn is the only one that hasn't. So maybe we might see him in the Glasgow game. Who knows? Nice to give him a send-off too. He never got much of a shout in Leinster, really, did he?
No, he never really got his opportunity.
But we may rue it if Exeter turn him into a top player like Scarlets did to Tyg Byrne. We might be going shit.
Well, maybe that's Munster's second row sorted in 6 years' time.
I was waiting for someone to say that. Sorry, Jay.
So that brings us nicely on to our quarter-final game we're going to play in a couple of weeks' time against Glasgow in the RES. And they lost to Edinburgh 28-11. I didn't actually see that game, but Edinburgh, like from the couple of games I've seen them play this season, they look an exciting team. And they seem to have usurped Glasgow as Scotland's best provincial side. Resurped,
let's say. Because they were always the best team in Scotland for all the way through the noughties, and then Glasgow kind of got in there in the teens, and now Edinburgh are reasserting their capital cityness, thanks to a guy who learned his trade in Cardiff, Danny Wilson.
Oh, we'll get to Cardiff, John. Don't you worry.
I know. I can't wait. Danny Wilson wasn't that a Scottish band?
Mary's Prayer.
There you go. See, love the way I segue that together. But yeah, Glasgow are not in the best of form, and I suspect we might rest a few players against them. I'd say we'll probably stack the bench with your Sextons and your James Ryans and whatever, and go at Glasgow, because the poor lads they're out of the Heineken Cup now because of that, and they've obviously lost their 1872 Cup, and they're not top of the Scottish Italian Conference, and things are going bad for if Murdo is still watching us or listening to us. Apologies, Murdo, but not a good.
In fairness to Glasgow, they would be in the Heineken Cup if it wasn't for the SRU. So, because they voted in favour of reserved regional places.
Yeah.
Because they if it was a straight 8, they'd be in.
That's true. Well, the Shields might generate some more interest in the game in other ways during the next few seasons. We'll see. But anyway,
and they're not going to go back to that to kind of meritocracy next season. Not say the season after next.
Maybe.
There's going to be another vote on it.
Yeah, maybe, but not next season.
No, not next season. This season. Okay, so just going through some of the other results from the weekend. So obviously we kind of mentioned it, John. Your second favorite team.
Least
walk us through what happened
in Wales.
It's all right,
John. Walk
John.
us through.
It's
60.
okay.
If you need a hug, we're here for you. 69-21. Like that's a dicking, and that's an embarrassing result.
That's an embarrassment if you're playing a good team.
Benetton are a good team. Go on, Evan.
Well, they are the current Rainbow Cup champions, I suppose.
I knew you'd say that.
And likely to be for a while. But no, I mean, just before we talk about this in specific, I watched a lot of the games this weekend. It was cracking weekends rugby. Ospreys game was a good game. Scarlet's game was a good game. The Ulster game was a good game. Our game was a good game. The Cardiff Benetton game was hilarious. Zebre Comet, okay, it wasn't a good game, but it was a competitive game. But Cardiff are shambles. They're an absolute shambles. On the other hand, a lot of those younger guys that Italian rugby are bringing through are beginning to, deliver some dividends for both the regions and their national team.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at their results, I think this season, right, Italy beat Wales at international, full senior men's international, under 20s international, and women's international level. Like it's quite an indictment on current status or standard of the Welsh teams. Like I just have it listed here. The Welsh teams finished 9th, 10th, 14th, and 15th in the league. You know, like none of them are in Europe.
Out of 6.
Sorry, I'm not. That's not right. None of them are in the
Ospreys.
quarterfinals. The Ospreys will be in Europe next season. But if it was a meritocracy, they wouldn't be in Europe. They did absolutely atrociously in the Heineken Cup pool stages. I think they finished close, if not bottom, close to bottom of their groups. Obviously, none of them came out. Like and they finished. The Welsh national team finished 5th in the Six Nations. Like I think that Gatland, and for I don't know how many years he coached Wales, 10 was it, more than 10?
More
Like
than
he papered
12,
over more than 10. Yeah, 12. Okay, but his ability to be a good coach and to get the best out of players papered over a huge amount of cracks in the system that they have there.
Undoubtedly. Well, a lot has happened though, and I don't know if we want to get mired into this whole thing.
No. I was just passing the comments.
Like Gatland took over, I think about 07-ish. So maybe he even got more than 12 years. But he finished in 2019. So it might have been 13, even 14 years. But as Mike Ruddock was a Grand Slam in 05, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how long. Was it Gatland straight after that? He might have even been 06. Gatland took over. Anyway, the regions were well funded up until about 09. And you know, the sugar daddies kind of pulled back, and the WRU never took over, and it just turned into a civil war. And
but John, they could say that the Ospreys might have been well funded, but they did absolutely. They won a few Magners League titles, but that's it. I mean, that's minimum that they should be winning. Like
At
they
least
should
they did
be
that.
in. Okay, but like look at the other clubs; they hardly did anything. Hardly like what did Cardiff do? What did
Cardiff Cardiff were a few penalty kicks away from a Heineken Cup final, and they won the Challenge Cup the next year.
And you could say Edinburgh were close, but no cigar. Another in 2012 these anomalies happen. It's when it's over a base of a period of time. You say that's a good team. That's a team that had a flash in the pan, had a couple of lucky results, and managed to get to a semi-final or a quarter-final.
I know. You also have to look at what's important in Welsh rugby. The politics in Welsh rugby had meant that any kind of commitment to the regions was difficult. At the same time, Luke Charteris has more Grand Slams than Ireland. So the priority in Wales was always on the national team because it was the only thing they could agree about. And they always were a boom or bust team. They'd go from winning a Grand Slam to finishing 3rd, to winning a Grand Slam to finishing 4th. Now, what seems to be happening at the moment is, they finished 5th, they lost to Wales, and all their teams are playing crap all at the same time, which I don't think has ever happened before. And I think that might be the indictment that all those years of political infighting within the regions and regions versus clubs and club versus country and all this kind of stuff, I think those chickens may have come home to roost.
Well, it's just that the amateur game in Wales has so much power over the professional game, and that's what the problem is. Really, that's at the root of it. That's the problem, because the guys who are voting in the WRU are. None of them have very little to do. None of them have very much to do with the regions, so they're never gonna. If it comes to regions versus national team, they haven't a hope. And even if it comes to regions versus, you'll get niggly stuff going on, and it's just not.
The question isn't region versus national team. The question is, you got guys in amateur clubs, small clubs, junior clubs in Wales who actually have more power than the regions.
Exactly.
In terms of voting rights, and they're not interested in the regions. It's in their interest for the regions to not be popular, because the fewer people go to the regions, the more people coming through their gates.
But Dave, it wasn't a dissimilar situation in Leinster 15 years ago, 17 years ago. Black Sunday, if you remember, the clubs.
Yeah.
If you remember, were selling tickets. Like it was in the Leinster clubs for Leinster professional entity to fail, because it was taking people who were going to their lunches to go to AIL matches and all of a sudden, like, you've only got a certain amount of time the weekend. You can only really get behind one particular side, and it's.
But how did Mick Dawson bring him into line?
Flipped them around the ear and wouldn't give them tickets.
He threatened their international tickets.
Yep.
Yeah. Look. Anyway,
let's not get stuck on the Welsh.
No, we won't. But on the other side of the coin, we obviously the Welsh teams had a poor season. The South African teams have justified all of the hype, their inclusion, the hype, or their inclusion in the competition. 3 of the teams are in the top 5. They got off to a very shaky start. I can remember thinking, Jesus. I remember going to the Aviva and watching us play the Stormers and thinking, "Geez, is this
Bulls?"
Oh, sorry, the Bulls. Sorry, excuse me, the Bulls. Like, probably the most famous South Africa, or say the most successful Super Rugby team in South Africa, and like we won fairly handy that day. And I was thinking, God, is this another? Are they just the cheetahs in disguise? Like, are they going to be? Just. Another famous name, but we're going to just have a facile game against them like we did when we played the Southern Kings or the Cheetahs. But like, they've come back in the second half of the season absolutely so strong. Like, I mean, we won 13 of our 18 games. The Stormers won 12 of theirs. The Bulls won 11 of theirs, and the Sharks won 11 of theirs. So, you know what I mean? Like,
I think
it's not just the home games that they're winning.
I think we saw the value. I think we saw the value, or what South Africans, the truth of what South Africans could bring when the Lions visited the RDS, and the Lions were would be the worst of the South African sides, and they were bloody hard to put away. We didn't get a bonus point against them. We struggled hard to beat them, and I think that's when we began to realize, okay, we're in it. We've a new vista in front of us now.
Well, something that struck me in the last few days, there have been a couple, at least, if not more, of announcements of signings back from European rugby on very long deals, 4 and 5. What's his name?
Dweeba going back today. Announced today.
And Khaleesi, didn't Khaleesi sign a 5-year contract? Like, oh God, that's pretty serious. So that's a commitment that shows that they're really looking to this URC as a good thing, which is great for us. Maybe not great when
and even Coetzee leaving Ulster mid-contract to go back to the, I think it's actually great. It's great that all these stars are going to be playing, and hopefully they can make it that this kind of season aligns, that we don't continue to send down our seconds and they don't send up theirs, that that it's actually.
I thought the game against Ulster the weekend was worthwhile. You like all the star names are playing for both sides. It's a pity the rain kind of didn't ruin it, but the rain didn't help. It would have been nice to see that game on a dry track. But that was a proper game between two proper sides. And I think we're going to see more of that. I'd love to see, a fully loaded Leinster team go down, play one of these great South African provinces in one of their historic stadiums. It'd be something that when we started watching rugby, Jason, you never saw South African teams anyway because they're all bloody banned. And now to see them in our league playing our guys, it's absolutely super.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. I think it's been a great addition, and I'd rather see less games of more high quality rather than like more facile games. Like, it was very frustrating for a few seasons when Leinster were just winning somewhere between 40 and 60 points margins. Like, I wasn't enjoying going to the matches for that. That's not sport in my eye. It's just it's like watching a really good It's like, I was going to say, it's like watching a Formula One race where it's just a procession, and like there's one team is just streaks ahead and so much better than another team, and they just nearly lap them by within half the race. Like, and it's just refreshing to see the Stormers and these kind of clubs.
I think the best thing to do is, I know what you mean, Jason, by what you said about seeing fewer games of higher quality. I'd like to see more games of higher quality, in terms of let's use the opportunity that they give us to raise the tide. to lift all the boats. How you go about that now? I'm not suggesting an answer. It's one of those things like I pulled the pin and the atom bomb went off. But it'd be nice to see that. It'd be nice to see a strong Wales. It'd be nice to see a strong Italy.
For sure, but it's a very noble thing. But like we've been playing in this league now for, like, put it this way, Dave. Like if Leinster and Munster, and to a lesser extent Ulster and Connacht, weren't in the league, could you imagine how rubbish it would be? And like that sound, like, and it sounds very cocky, and I don't mean it to be. It's just the standard of the Welsh clubs and sometimes the Scottish clubs, and particularly the Italian clubs, it's atrocious. Like, you could literally pick our third team, and they will put up, like, as like they were talking last night, and against the Head, like Leinster's second team could come top 8. I think if you took out the South Africans, our Leinster second team will probably come in the top 5.
And you see, but the other side of that, Jason, is strategically that suits the IRFU to have second string players getting top level competition against first string teams, even if they aren't quite. People, the Welsh have often criticised the Leinster selection policy, but the Leinster selection policy and the Munster selection policy and the Ulster selection policy, it's what's kept the league semi-competitive.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. Like, it is
now, so they
there
can
to produce. But like they don't care about it. You know what I mean? Like, when you go and you see, like, so on Premier Sports, they kind of, it seems to be quite Welsh orientated, and they're regularly at a Welsh ground. There's no one in the stadium. There's absolutely nobody in it. Like, and no matter what they do, they can't. Like, even the Welsh derbies, people don't seem to turn up for. Like, there was 32,000 at a dead rubber in the Aviva Stadium. Like, do you think 32,000 would turn up for a dead rudder with Scarlets against Ospreys?
Yeah, but you're dealing with a whole load of things there, including, a national inferiority complex and all sorts of stuff there with Wales. There's two things needed in Wales. One is a good set of administrators to fix things, and 2, therapy.
Okay, I'm going to draw a line. We spoke about Wales and talked about Munster far too much. We're going to talk about our final of our 6th European Cup final on Saturday. So we've heard the rumours. We saw Skelton come on for a few minutes for them, but like, I thought O'Gara was speaking out of both sides of his mouth. I saw him being interviewed on Off the Ball, and I'm glad Leo kind of saw through it and said, "Don't believe a word that comes out of this man's mouth."
If we start with Blockhead's question on Leinster fans, he said, "Should we be afraid of the skeleton in the closet?" Which I thought was quite a good way to put it. Nice. And Derek Tulu asks, "Is Will Skelton playing or not?" I don't care.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I prefer him not to play, to be quite honest with you.
No, honestly, obviously I prefer Shirley Temple to be playing there. But, I think that we should be confident in our own team's ability to play around him, kind of in the way we didn't last year. I think we should have a way to get past this guy. And not get past him, but to negate him, to not make him a factor. Everybody keeps talking. If you keep talking about a bogeyman becomes real.
I think he was a bit of a plodder until they got him in Saracens. They made him fit. They hid his burger vouchers and, turned him into a serious athlete. And he's, he was always a big guy. But he didn't have the fitness. And now, well, he hardly has the fitness coming back after injury and playing 10 minutes last week. So I think that's all a lot of distraction. I don't think it really matters whether he plays or doesn't play. Yeah, he's a big guy. So what? Toulouse were big guys, as you said, Dave. What the hell happened to them? They had at least 4 almost Will Skelton-sized humans in their team, and it didn't do them any good. So I'm hoping it'll be the same. It's more interesting the Kerr Barlow side of things, who Jameson Gibson Park would know pretty well. He was supposed to be out for the season at one stage, and now he's supposed to be playing. So God knows until you see.
And that's I have a feeling that's just more Plamas from O'Gara. I mean, he's talking about getting over micro hurling gloves.
Yeah.
And all sorts. I mean, I think Rog is master of media. I mean, he learned from the feet of Kidney. He knows what he's doing. He wants everybody to be talking about things that aren't related to the game.
Yeah, well, Gatland was a master. Gatland used to talk about all kinds of crap just to take the heat off his players.
Yeah,
and it didn't really matter what he was talking about or what he was saying or whether it was true or what. It was just something to point the media at so they wouldn't be pointing at what he didn't want them talking about.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's the same with Rog. Whether either of those two players, obviously if Kerr Barlow is out, it's a big blow for them. Whether he distracts people by saying he's going to be there when he's not, or whether he distracts people by saying he's not going to be there when he is, and he ends up only lasting 20 minutes, or whatever the scenario is, it's not good for La Rochelle.
Because while everyone's talking about Skelton and to a lesser extent Kerr Barlow, nobody's talking about Vito and nobody's talking about what he's going to do in the centres with Dante and Botti and stuff like that. Those are the key calls.
Well, Vito got injured as far as I know.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So
nobody's talking about that because he's a much more important player to them than Skelton is.
Absolutely, 100%.
So it's a nice bit of well played, Mr. O'Gara, but we're on to you.
The Skibbereen Eagle.
Interesting to see what happens with Vito. All right, I mean, if Kerr Barlow and Vito are not named in the team, that's a huge hit to them. Huge.
But one thing I did find quite interesting and ironic that our league is vilified for making changes, for when Leinster rotated and rested the entire 23 or 22 of 23 last weekend when we were playing Munster. La Rochelle did the exact same thing where they made 14 changes from the starting 15 against Racing for their game against Stade. But very little of that was kind of very little was made out of it.
Well, in fairness, Jay, we have no idea what was made out of it because we don't read French papers.
Well,
or listen to French podcasts.
Well, no, but what I am saying though is that our league is vilified by our media here, who will criticize it because and will downplay the importance. Like there was hardly any coverage of the post. Like for example, there's normally on Off the Ball on Sundays there's a piece about rugby. Whatever happened over the weekend. There was nothing on Sunday about, with the exception of the paper review, about Leinster-Munster's game, and there was 32,000 people at it, and nothing was covered. But if the shoe was on the other foot, maybe they might have had some coverage of it.
Did you listen to it on Sunday?
I tried to listen to it.
You just validated their editorial choices.
Well, Dave, it's the only show in town, darn. So, you got to listen to what you want to listen to. But my point is, though, that our league is continually being chipped away, whether it's on the radio, the TV, or the newspapers, because they will falsely claim that there's no consistency in selection and the teams are being rested, and even that was the same narrative when the Toulouse coach was in the press conference and he made the comparison between Ntamack and Sexton's minutes that they've played. But seems to forget about the games that they drop all of their stars and they play a seconds team. And it worked out for La Rochelle in that particular game at the weekend because they probably got a very good strong side and they have to try and keep everybody happy. That's what having a squad is. It's not just, you can't just continually play your first 15. It's about having a squad and keep everyone fresh and keeping them interested in wanting to compete for the jersey.
Well, on that subject, we are in the very, very lucky position that we pretty much, if Tyke Furlong and James Lowe are good to go, we pretty much have our top team. We have, touch wood, 0 injuries, apart from possibly the 2 of them. you know, if we're going to win a Heineken Cup, we've got to this time. We're in the final, and we've got to this part of the season with no injuries. We won't get a better chance than this to win a Heineken Cup. Now, whether we win or we don't win, we won't get a better chance than this. It's everything's coming up Millhouse. Everything, all the stars are aligning in terms of having the right players with the right amount of minutes, and you know, if anything,
well,
I'd say a few of them are undercooked, but they're certainly not worn out.
If you look at the selection from say our game when we played La Rochelle last season in the semi-final, and if you compare it to what we might say could be our starting 15, if we go along with everyone is fit and everybody is pretty much, you know, what we said, it could be Frawley, might have Larmer in there, like little sort of toss of coins. But you would kind of say, like last season, we had Ross Byrne at out half, Sexton's in there, Luke McGrath started at 9, see Jemison comes in his place, Porter's taken over at loose head, Toner's gone, you know, presumably Ross Maloney's going to start there, and Darius comes in came in for Rugg at semi-final. But whatever about those, I think there was 6 changes to the starting 15. It's actually the quality on the bench is significant. Like our bench this season is significantly stronger. So like I'd say that Sheehan is stronger than Tracy. Healy would be better than Ed Byrne. You know, you got like if Luke McGrath sits on the bench, he's better than Osborne, I'd say. You know, and then you've got Frawley ahead of Rory O'Loughlin. So I think the guys that are going to come off the bench are going to have a significant impact, but the fellas that are on the bench this year, I think are better than the fellas who were on the bench last year.
And that's what did for us in 2019 against Saracens, I think, was their bench compared to ours. And that's what did for us possibly last year against La Rochelle. Their bench was better than ours. So hopefully, and lots of times through history, Toulon in Lansdowne Road back in 2015 or whenever it was, they weren't actually very good, but they were just able to pound us out of it by what they were able to bring on from the bench. And we just didn't have that kind of horsepower. So it's great to be in a situation where if we're going to lose this game, we're not going to lose it because we didn't have our best guys fit, which is a great place to be in. So bring it on. Show us what you got, Ronan.
The only one little fly in the ointment would be maybe the heat might be a contributing factor. Like I'm reading, it's somewhere between 26 and 30 degrees in the south of France at the moment. Obviously the match is on at 5:15 in the evening in France, so the sun might have gone in a little bit, but it's still going to be warm, but maybe not midday heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that would mitigate against fellas with red hair like Frawley. They wouldn't have the sun protection going on to be able to cope. But we'll see.
The big red head on O'Gara as well. Could you imagine?
Beetroot head. I think that our lads are pretty fit though. You know, whether they can take heat or not, they can take sweating. Whether it's you know, they're a pretty fit bunch. So yeah. I think they'd stand up to that reasonably well.
And it was like I obviously not to the same extent as it was in France, but it was still quite a warm day when we played Toulouse in the Aviva, you know, and we still ran the ball and we wanted to move the point of contact away from the big men. But obviously, you know, 21 degrees is a lot different than 31 degrees, but it was still a hot day in Dublin.
Sure. Well,
Dave, you've got some questions from our viewer.
From our viewer, we do, yeah. Okay, Rog asks, can we spend 45 minutes plus talking about Munster's game this weekend? I think we might manage that. Yeah. He wants to know who wears 23, Larmer or a forward or Frawley. So I guess he's talking 6'2", 5'3". Yeah, 6'2" versus 5'3".
That's a very interesting question, and you could load you could have 19 and 20 being Joe Mccarthy and Ryan Baird, and still have Rhys Ruddock at 21. Oof, sir, that's a bit tempting. or you could go with the 5-3 and have either Frawley or Larmer. Larmer would be great to spring from the bench if we were losing to maybe cut a few lines. However, Frawley might be great to close it out from 12, or there's so many options there. Presuming Frawley has recovered from his knock. So yeah, Frawley's in great form, and Larmer's just come back. Looks to be in fairly screaming form too. Depends on what you want. If you want somebody if you want a hot stepper, then obviously Larmer is the man.
So just to sum up, John, what you're saying is you'd go with 6-2 or 5-3, and you'd go with Larmer or Frawley or neither in favour of a forward.
No, if it was me, I'd go Ryan Baird, Joe Mccarthy, and Reece Ruddock. And
you go 6-2 and just have the two specialist halfbacks.
And I might put Frawley ahead of Ross Byrne. I might not. That'd be where I'd be looking. But hey, I'm not Leo.
Well, they went 5-3 in the La Rochelle semi-final last year, and also the Toulouse semi-final this year. So I suspect that they'll do something similar.
Yeah, well, it's going to be hot, like you say. You might want a few. The other side of that, though, is like all bets are off. You might. Who wants to take them on in a forward battle? Okay, it's great having a load of back rowers and second rowers, but if we're not trying to take them on in a grunt fest, which I would advise us not to, then maybe you would want extra backs and have extra options in the backs. Nice to have options either way.
Yeah, I've very little opinion on the subject. I can see the benefits to both. Personally, I prefer a 5-3 split, just because I like to have an extra back option there. But I can see the reasoning for the other thing. To be honest with you, I hope that we're in a position with 10, 15 minutes left where it's irrelevant. And I think we will be. I think a lot of how we play this year and how the game in Ireland in general, not just with Leinster, but also with Ireland, has been informed by what happened against La Rochelle last year, where we realised that, no matter what we did, no matter who we signed, we were never, ever going to be able to go toe-to-toe with behemoths. So what we do is we don't try and go toe-to-toe with behemoths. You can see it in the way that Andy Farrell's teams play, and you can see it in the way that Leo and Stu's teams play now. It's all about movement. It's all about accuracy. It's all about pace, and it's all about speed. The things that big guys really, really hate. And I think I completely agree with you, Dave. And also our skill level seems to have gone up a notch. Like even last week, when our seconds were playing, like the first scrum wasn't until 26 minutes. So that means the ball hadn't been knocked on. Now, there might have been a couple of advantages played, but the ball hadn't been knocked on for a scrum for 26 minutes. I think the skill level, or the skill drill that they do, has been upped significantly, so that we don't get into that, tying 8 forwards against and been shoved off the ball or been penalised off the ball. Avoid all contact. Run around them.
That's what that is. It's drill. It's like that's how the All Blacks used to do it back in the day. And I remember we commented on them at the World Cup when there was a big injury break. They'd be running up and down the pitch, doing drills. So drilling, that's how you're handling. And if you don't do drills for a couple of weeks, your handling goes down. You have to do it.
It's funny. I was listening to an interview. I can't remember the All Black, but he was saying that he went to a school, and he was. Sort of the teachers were all kind of saying, with the kids, would you just do a few little drills, because we'd love to see. And the ones that he was doing was pretty much the ones that the kids were doing, just getting them in grids and doing little pop passes. And the teacher was kind of going, is like, seriously, is that what you're? And he says, yeah, but we just do it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And just keep doing it. And still, yeah. So it was actually Dan Carter. It was Dan Carter that was actually saying it, yeah.
I often say about the All Blacks that they don't actually do anything fancy, but what they do is they do the basics really, really, really well. And science to the uninitiated looks like magic. And that's why the All Blacks look like magic, because they do the most basic things 100 times better than everyone else, so it looks like magic. But that's what Leinster are chasing. They're chasing that kind of that level of skill perfection. So that if you play a really simple game, it's really easy to play. Anyone can step into it, but you do it so fast, it's almost impossible to stop.
Yeah, and Stew's Day, as it's famously called, when he does his everything to fatigue, working right to fatigue, and having the guys falling over at the end of it. That's called executing skills under pressure. And it's all very well being able to pass the ball when you're running up and down the field doing a drill, but being able to pass the ball when you're under massive pressure, you've got some big bloke running at you about to take you out of it. To be able to let that ball away at the very last second when he's committed to tackling you, or whatever the other options are, dummying it, when you're able to execute those skills under that amount of pressure, that's what wins you. And that's what did the All Blacks over the years. It's putting those skills under massive pressure in training and also during games. And you can see it in international rugby has really increased in pace in the last 10 years. If you look at a game now from, say, 2009, 10, the game is a lot faster on, both at club level and at international level. And also the line, the way forwards and backs are able to pass right on the gain line, if you want to use that expression, just before they're about to be tackled. And I don't know how sometimes they get the ball off without being intercepted, but that's another skill that they've got from years of doing it under pressure repetitively.
If you showed Rory O'Loughlin's try to Jason, John and Dave from 2001, we think that was magic. Forwards handling the ball like that. Or we showed Ed Burns' footwork in the lead up to Scott Penny's try, or Scott Penny's footwork in the lead up to Scott Penny's try. That's the evolution of the game over the last 20 years, 25 years. It's gone to a new place. But to go back to the original point, we have to play that way, because we're never going to, unless in 20 years' time, we get some kind of a national change in our physiology. We're never going to be able to take on those guys at that size, so we have to beat them with speed.
Yeah, and to think that we can beat them by beating them up is just
it's crazy.
And if we did go down that road again, that's insanity, right? Expecting the same result for different results, doing the same thing. Okay, so any more questions?
I have another question from Alan Walsh. And Alan Walsh wants to know, has the Carberry move failed? Outplayed by our inexperienced half-back pairing?
You'd have to say yes in some ways. It has. Like Joey Carberry has been the IRFU's poster boy since he left, since before he left Leinster, but especially since he left Leinster. It's like the onus is on them to prove that, and obviously on him by extension, to prove that he's number 2 to Johnny Sexton. Or, you would have expected him to be number 1 at this stage. Like Johnny Sexton is 107 and is going to go to the World Cup if he doesn't get injured. That's an indictment on all the other out halves in the country, really. But Joey Carberry is the one that's been given the most chances at international level and been given the most time to prove himself of all. Like, if he's fit, he's on the bench behind Johnny, and if he's fit, he's starting if Johnny's injured. Like, pretty much back as far as, I don't know, how far back do you want to go? What year did he leave Leinster?
2017, 18, wasn't it?
Yeah, so...
Well, 2018, after we won the European Cup, he moved.
Yeah, it's a pity that it hasn't worked out as well as everybody had hoped, including Joey Carberry himself. But for whatever reason, it hasn't. You can blame coaching down south. You can blame, him. You can blame a number of things. But for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out. And the thing that we always said, moving him to 15, or at least having him being able to change to 15 during the game, Well, Barrett does it, or did it. It's a legitimate thing, and it gives you an extra tool in your box to have another distributor at fullback at certain points in the game. He was never. The whole thing was, he has to play 10. He has to play 10. He went to Munster just to play 10. Where are they going to put him at? They won't be allowed to put him at 15. And unfortunately, maybe if they had moved him around a bit, he might have had a bit. He might have been an option at 15 more often. So it's fallen. It's not worked out as my.
Yeah, it hasn't been. I mean, it's not like he's gone down there and been dreadful, because he hasn't.
Absolutely not.
He's been unfortunate with injuries as well. But I think what the plan was out of this, there would be an Irish international starter, and that's not the case. So from that, if you're looking at that purely as your outcome, then it hasn't worked. Has he kept Munster competitive? Munster have been competitive. I mean, we like to slag them off, but I mean, they're into the knockouts of the Pro 14 as they always generally are. They were in the knockouts of Europe, as they generally always are. So, he hasn't. It's not as if he's run them into the ground or anything. So he's been successful in that regard. And there are younger players coming through in Munster. So at least he's kept the jersey warm. And that sounds like I'm damning him with faint praise, and that's not what I'm trying to go with this. I think an opportunity was lost when he wasn't moved to fullback at Leinster. Because suddenly in the aftermath, but suddenly in the 2 years later, every team was looking for a guy who could be a playmaker from fullback, and we had one, and we moved away from that. Now, whether that was, it doesn't matter if he was moved away from it at Leinster or moved away from it somewhere else. We moved away from it, and then we ended up having to try and find it again. Now, fortunately, we did. Certainly in Leinster, we did anyway. Indeed, I think we found it once or twice. I think Jimmy O'Brien can do that role as well. But has it been a success? Jury's still out.
I'm going to sort of come in between the two of you a little bit, because I think if you look, like, a lot of the time, an out half's performance is really based on the type of ball that he's provided.
Yeah.
The Munster pack is like, I'm not going to call it powder puff, because it clearly isn't powder puff, but the quality of the players that are there, like, I mean, are Archer and Ryan, and before that Cronin, are these guys international standard front row players? No. Scanlon, you got Klein, like, they had Billy Holland, for God's sake, for up to only last season.
And he was actually their best. He was actually their best front five forward, I think.
Okay.
No, but I mean, he was. I mean, he delivered week after week.
Okay. But my point is that pack would put the fear of God into absolutely nobody. Then you have a scrum half in front of him that is told by his coach to kick the ball. So any quick ball they're getting there, they're putting box, or it's been slowed down and he's putting box kicks up, or the scrum half is kicking it. Like, I feel sorry for Carberry, because I'm sure he's an extremely talented player who wanted what was best for himself and probably for Ireland to go and to get to be a starting out half. And then I'm sure in a greater scheme of things, he would have liked to have been 5 years down the road from where he is now, but behind a pack that is a killer pack. And it like, he went to the wrong club if he was going to get that, if he was looking for that. But that might be just down to poor recruitment. But then also, I would say, a very poor coach, and with a very limited tactical appreciation of the game. And I feel sorry for him. And I mean, when he does come on, and he played, like, when I was at the game when he came on against New Zealand, he closed out that game, and he kicked a couple of penalties at the end of it. That he's got, he was the only one that got his kick in the penalties. He got his kick against the All Blacks. And I think he'd be a different player if he was playing in or behind a better pack.
Yeah, absolutely. By no means am I saying he's rubbish. I mean, I just think that I'm not commenting necessarily on him as a player. I'm just saying that the experiment or the whatever it is that happened with the IRFU movement to Munster hasn't worked out. For whether or not for the reasons that you say, Jason, about them not having a great pack, yada yada. Whether it's, I'm not putting all that on Carberry's shoulders at all. If Johnny Sexton had gone back to Racing and Joey had been first choice at Leinster and not gone to Munster, maybe things would have been different, but just as the dice or as the cards have fallen for Joey Carberry, it hasn't worked out. And by that I mean the IRFU's strategy to move him to Munster so as he could start at 10 more often. And that's what I'm commenting on. I think that's possibly what the question is about.
But the bigger indictment is that the Munster branch were offering Van Graan an extension on his contract.
I don't think that's fair, Jason. I think the IRFU were offering him an extension on his contract.
Okay, fair enough.
Can I ask? Do you remember who's in charge of elite coaching contracts in Ireland?
You're going to remind me, aren't you?
No.
He's an Antipodean. He's an Antipodean fella, is he?
I'm just going to leave it in the air. They were offering him another 2 years.
Yeah, that's madness,
He's officially known as Dave's mate.
But yeah, I mean, I was going to come back in and say that to you, Jason. Critical of, certainly we can be critical of Van Graan. He was a relatively inexperienced coach who was put into a big job because his mate reckoned he was up to it. But I can't see the reason for giving him a further 2 years, which they wanted to do. I just can't see it.
No.
But giving maybe 7 years as a coach there, if he had accepted it, and that's someone who's failing upwards, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Well, he's failing upwards to Bath in a proper league.
But is he though? Is he though? Anyway, look.
I've always liked Bath. I like their fans. I've always liked the town. They didn't deserve that.
No, I think it's going to be like Matt O'Connor was for us when we got him off Leicester, and we were kind of going, well, maybe it'll work out for us. It didn't seem to work out for Leicester, and boy, were we wrong there.
Munster would kill to have Matt O'Connor's success rate with Leinster.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
No, but it's true when you think about it.
Yeah. I know failure that gets you sacked was losing a semi-final in Europe and
winning
a Pro 14.
Well, winning the Pro 14 the first year, but not making knockout's the second year.
Yeah, that was the killer. Anyway. A quick question here: with Dirty Dev retiring, who's going to steal all the Munster pens?
That's a very Leinster fans question, that one.
Yeah, I think Joe Mccarthy looks like he might be the Parker pincher in chief.
Joe McCarthy's going to steal their lunch, never mind their pens, and eat it behind the stand during half time before he goes back on the field. Very happy with Joe. I know I'm slagging him a little bit, but what's he going to be like when he's 25?
Yeah, imagine how good he'd be if he played sevens, which is leading me to a nice segue, actually. Even though I know this is a rugby union podcast, but still, Irish sevens teams, both male and female, did really, really well at the weekend in the Toulouse event. Men's team ended up with silver, women's team ended up fourth. Superb achievement. I mean,
it's the way forward, Dave.
Yeah, it certainly is the way forward. All right. All 245 people who watched it agreed with me. But no, I mean, I think you have to, for a country that has no record of sevens or no history of sevens whatsoever, to get to the finals of events or to get to the knockout stages of events, as they do quite regularly. I mean, my problem about sevens is its relation to rugby union, not the sport in and of itself. The game in and of itself is what it is, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy watching the players. I think they're great players. They're great sevens players. I don't think it has anything to do with rugby union anymore. I think it's evolved. I think rugby league is closer to rugby union than sevens is.
Fitness levels in sevens are horrendous.
Yeah, they are.
You're a lot fitter to play sevens than you do.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, it's a totally different sport now. But not a totally different sport. It's a very different sport now. But at the same time, they should be celebrated for their achievements and for their excellence. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if Sevens was any good, Jordan Conroy would be playing for Connacht. Terry Kennedy will be playing for Leinster, but they're not. But they're the two biggest stars on the Sevens circuit.
Yeah, but you got someone like Will Connors and Hugo Keenan both came through the Sevens circuit.
No, they didn't come through the Sevens circuit.
Well,
they didn't come through the Sevens circuit.
They both played from the Sevens team. That's where they were farmed out, and then that's where they got some experience.
Hugo Keenan started playing minis when he was 9. He played schools rugby, played junior cup rugby, senior cup rugby. Played age grade representative rugby for Leinster, played age grade representative rugby for Ireland, went through the Leinster Academy. Wasn't that a complete waste of money when we could have just sent him off for a year to play sevens?
Well, hold on, you go and you play sevens when you're in your 20s, Dave, or your late teens.
I will believe sevens is a valuable pathway into rugby union when they take a talented Gaelic footballer, a talented soccer player into the program, and he comes out the other end and plays rugby union. Because at the moment, you've got guys with 14 years worth of rugby going into it for 6 months, and the reason they're good is because of sevens. Don't think so. No, not buying it.
Okay. Just moving on from that, one thing that I was quite interested to read a comment that somebody had made about just going back to the Munster thing, just very briefly, that they wanted to change that they were suggesting that Munster change their emphasis and take the league more seriously than they do, and move away from continually just looking at the Champions Cup or the European Cup. And I think, going back to like when Munster were very successful in the European Cup, and we as Leinster weren't, that was one thing that we actually did do, was take the league seriously. And it meant that there was the same people were going to the Heineken Cup matches as were going to the league matches, that people had bought in, whereas there's a complete disregard. And because it's the successful team didn't take the league seriously, none of the media took the league seriously and still don't take the league seriously. And there's no coverage of it on national broadcasts, except, because RT are contractually obliged to cover it. That's the only reason they talk about it. They don't talk about it during the week on their news broadcasts, unless there's a press release from an update on an injury. But they certainly don't go looking for a story. They don't cover it from a broader perspective. But the point is that Leinster did take the league seriously, and Leinster do use the league to bring all of those guys through. And I mentioned a couple of guys like Connors and Keenan. Those guys cut their teeth in the old Pro 14, and they've come through. And just like we're talking about Joe Mccarthy and all the other lads that played at the weekend, those guys are cutting their teeth in the league. And in 5 years' time, those guys, or hopefully a lot of them, will have come through and will be starring in the Heineken Cup team, in the first team, let's call it, and be taking over the place of the guys that were rested at the weekend. But Munster certainly hadn't done that, and they need to shift their emphasis and take that league. Like, they were continually trying to win games under Van Graan and picking their and not bringing through any of their young talent. Look how long it's taken a Hearn to get through when you consider Bird is already capped. And he's going to be like a Hearn could be seen as the next Munster second row is going to be there for 10 years. But your man McCarthy's after getting a load of experience now that he could usurp him and move past him.
And
you see all the hype about, say, for example, hype's probably the wrong word because he's a very good player, but about Alex Kendall, for example. Scott Penny's only about a year older than him, and he's got, nearly 60 Leinster caps at this stage.
Yeah.
Whereas Kendall has, 15, 20 all this season. So it's very hard to judge these players. I agree with you. One thing I would say is, and it's something they kind of, all of a sudden they're complaining about, but it is a true thing, that they don't have the depth of talent, or they don't have the depth of in Munster to be making those changes. But I do agree with you. I don't know, maybe the players, maybe that's a fans thing, Jay. I think the players probably take it seriously enough.
No, well, can I just say, again, take as much out of it or as little out of it as you want to. Any interview that I've heard Ronan O'Gara talk about, especially when he's talking about coaching in France and wanting to come back for the Leinster job or the Munster job or the Ireland job, he scoffs at the idea that he would give up or he talks about the intensity of the French league, and he really derogatory towards the URC. Now, obviously, he's been out of that league for 7 or 8 years, or whatever how long it is that he's retired, but he has zero respect for it. And again, I mean, not just him. You see O'Driscoll talking about it as well. You know, he didn't play an away game in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's it.
That's what I was going to say. I'd say Roger and Bod could have a non-appearance off when it came to the league, and you know that to a certain extent that suited Leinster and it suited Ireland and it suited Munster and it suited Ireland, and that's the way it was. But the league has changed. The league is a different league. I mean, the rugby and I think that I know Jason doesn't think it's up to much because you watch teams play Leinster and we're very, very good and we hockey them and it doesn't look competitive. But there's a lot of good rugby out there if you watch, like in other games, some really good rugby. So I don't think that. I think in Ireland we're quite guilty of being insular about looking only at the Irish teams and we don't watch the other games, which often are very, very entertaining. It's certainly the best league. If you get a good game in the URC, it's one of the best leagues to watch.
Yeah,
I mean, you couldn't pay me to watch most top 14 games. Well, actually, you could pay me because my family are from Cavan, so I'm quite acquisitive.
I'm weird thing that when I go to watch Leinster play.
Saving up for that router again for Jason.
Yeah.
My daughter's obviously come home and turned on all their internet devices.
But yeah, no. What were we saying, Jay? Anyway.
Sorry, I was just saying that, like, and I made the point earlier tonight. I just don't get any enjoyment watching Leinster score 70 points against a team that is not scoring 55 points. Like when they only score 10 points.
I understand that. But the other side of that is that we are really, really good.
We are. I get that. I do get that, Dave. But like, I mean, like for example, in the match against Montpellier this year, like, I mean, that was I kind of didn't really enjoy that, even though it was great that we won and everything. But like, that's not what's.
No, I mean, it was a nothing match. It wasn't even teams. I mean, we played Quins in pre-season. They put up more of a fight. And that was a pre-season friendly. No, I agree with you. But that was a certain set of circumstances. But I do agree with you.
Yeah,
that kind of game is not entertaining. The entertainment in sport comes from competition.
Exactly.
If you just watch it because your team's going to win all the time, you're not watching sport. Yeah. You're not watching for the sport.
And I was being a bit facetious when I said earlier on, you know, like, where Munster are rivals anymore. You know, but like a rivalry is meaning that I brought my daughter to the match on Saturday, and like she wouldn't have been really familiar with the nuances that, well, we've rotated our entire team and there's a good chance we could lose this game. And I was telling her this as we're walking in.
You want to tell her something else?
Yeah, she obviously didn't want that story told, John. She'd have to pull in the plug on Jay.
Oh, dear.
So that is www.gofundme.ie/by Jay a Router.
Absolutely.
Actually, I think we have lost him.
By next week.
Yeah.
I have one during the week. Heineken Cup final present for Jason.
Yes.
No, I'm back.
Hey!
Wait, I'm back. But I tell you, we've only got this router. We only changed it. Virgin Media brought us out one only a couple of months ago. So there you go.
You need a professional around to sort that out. That's what you need.
Yeah, it's a pity you don't know any. No, but I do agree with you, Jason, that watching facile, uncompetitive games isn't sport. It's not why we watch sport. But I do think that the rivalry is still a rivalry because apart from anything else, you've got that whole kind of civic province divide. You've got the history of it. I mean, look, they'll be back. You know, sport is circular. These things move in troughs and peaks. At the moment, they're in a trough. I don't know if they've done enough to control their drop the way that maybe we did when we were kind of in a bit of a trough. But they I don't know if they have, but they'll be back. I mean, I'd say rumours of Munster's demise are greatly exaggerated.
Well, I hope so, because we do need the rivalry, and to have, you know, like that day in Croke Park when it was 80.
Yeah, look, Irish rugby was built on that. I mean,
yeah,
I don't like to be dismissive of Ulster, because I mean, traditionally they're the second most successful province behind us in terms of, you know, the Interpro series and all that kind of stuff, and they were the first team to win a European Cup. But the rivalry, the modern Irish game was built on the rivalry between Munster and Leinster. It's what took it off the inside pages, put it on the back pages, and then moved it onto the front pages.
Yes, correct. Anyway, boys, before we go, just want to get your predictions for the final. John?
I would say Leinster by 8. I'm being
Dave?
Leinster by 16.
Oh, well, Para has us by 12, even without the teams being selected. So I'm going to go for 10.
Well, I'm
all very confident.
I think we are. We'll see.
Let's hope it's not misplaced.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, boys, as ever, thanks very much. Thanks very much for watching. If you are watching and following us, Facebook, Twitter, and all the other social media outlets. Cheers. Thanks again. Bye.